in Child Protective Service. Kids are not safe in Child Protective Services, and they won't give them back to their loving families because they're making money.
This is a legal system that you're going into. And if you don't know the rules, you will be chewed up and spit out.
If I could say anything to a mother who just got their children detained, you're in a crisis. Yeah. Life feels like it's over. The most important thing is regaining custody of your children.
The child welfare system at its core is designed to protect children who need protection, okay? And that's key, is who need protection.
So social workers, out of fear, will remove more children rather than only remove those children that truly need to be removed.
It's okay. It's okay.
This isn't someone stole your car. Someone broke into your house. This is someone took your child, your flesh and blood.
It doesn't say on this order that it was not proven. It says untrue.
True.
I immediately knew that, okay, well, this ain't over.
Were there signs there? Were there no signs? Did I miss them? Did I catch them? At this point, I honestly don't know.
Families only get a finite amount of time to reunify.
I came into this field to help families, not destroy them.
The difference between the criminal system and the child welfare system is substantial. You have more rights as a criminal than you do as a parent.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Fight CPS, a Civil Rights Struggle. I'm your host, Amanda Cisco. We are starting late today because we're having some technical networking difficulties with our guests. We're going to keep trying to get them on in the background. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into our legal education portion for tonight. It's been, several shows since I've really been able to delve into that. So today we are going to cover courtroom objections, and I will be reading off of a course that I purchased, which I absolutely love. He's a huge mentor of mine. So, and I'm going to be kind of paraphrasing because I want to avoid any kind of plagiarism. I give full credit to Juris Dictionary. So without further ado, let's jump right into the introduction. So basically, you're preserving, by making courtroom objections, you're preserving your right to appeal. So not all judges play by the rules, and not all judges know how to apply the rules. Some judges don't like to enforce the rules, thinking they can make up the rules as they go along. And a few judges abuse the rules on purpose. And also, if you guys like my shirt, I found it and I just had to buy it. Others do the best they can and they still make mistakes. So this is what objections are for. So why object? When someone other than, keyword, other than the judge, when someone other than the judge makes a mistake, you object. Why do you object? To give the judge an opportunity to do what's right. If the judge does what's right and your objection is correct, the judge will sustain your objection, or sustain, not sustain. The judge will sustain your objection and correct the mistake. If it was a mistake or outright trick of the other side, the judge will order the other side to stick to the rules. If you object in a timely manner, the mistake will be fixed with no harm to your cause. If the judge doesn't do what's right and your objection is correct, you'll have created an entry in the court record for an appellate court to review if it becomes necessary to appeal. Why must you object? Number one, to stop a mistake or trick of your opponent. Number two is to stop a mistake or intentional error of the judge. Number three is to give the judge an opportunity to do what's right. And number four is to create a record for appeal if the judge does wrong. Now, before I read any further, a lot of family trial courts do not keep a record of their proceedings. So in criminal court, there's always like a record, a transcript of everything that's said during the trial. Not all family trial courts have this. In fact, a lot of them don't do it. So it's really important for you to make sure that don't let the city do it. Make sure that you have your own court reporter there present. And also use that court reporter as an opportunity to get things on the record that aren't necessarily being said. For example, I had somebody on cross-examination who was just lying under oath left and right. So, and I had a list of questions that I was going to ask her. And this was my first time actually, doing cross-examination on anyone or any type of examination. So, and I'm pro se at this point. So I'm asking her these questions, and like the judge is like huffing, puffing, rolling her eyes. The CPS workers are smacking their teeth. And I said, let the record show that the CPS workers are smacking their teeth. Let the record show that the judge is rolling her eyes and that these parties are behaving inappropriately. And I made eye contact with the court reporter because she should be sitting there right in front of the bench, like between the bench where the judge is and then the tables where both parties sit. Your court reporter should be right there in front of the bench so she can see all parties in the room to accurately make her record. So whose rules do we go by? The rules we go by are the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure. Now, there are several. Oh, it looks like we've got John coming on. Here, let me just. Okay. Hey, so I'm in our legal portion. So just kind of stand by for a minute. We're going to be going over courtroom objections. John, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So while I get settled, I'll continue. So there are several layers to the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure. There are, with the rules of procedure, you've got the federal rules of procedure and the federal rules of evidence. You've got the rules of civil procedure and the rules of criminal procedure. Your jurisdiction will also have their own also set of rules of evidence and procedure. They're going to have, there's going to be the Virginia rules of the Supreme Court, well, technically the rules of the Supreme Court of Virginia for my jurisdiction, and they're going to have their own set of rules for their criminal procedures. So there's, it's really important to consult what the rules are in your jurisdiction. Additionally, we go by statutes, constitutional provisions, and what prior appellate court decisions have to say about the statutes and constitutional provisions and how they apply to certain sets of facts, including rulings by judges. So what do you do when someone breaks the rule in court? You object. You give the judge an opportunity to correct the mistake. Do not hesitate. Timely objections are very important. So when objecting, here, let's see. 1403 Ram says, how does one go about getting a court reporter? It's not a recorder, it's a reporter. And is the cost covered by the county who pays for this? Okay, so 1403 Ram, I would advise you to pay for your own court reporter, aka a stenographer, and it usually will be between $200 and $350 for their appearance plus 30, and that should cover their appearance plus the first hour. And it's usually the going market rate is about $35 an hour after that initial cost. So it's going to be between $250 and $350. Now the transcript itself is several $100s. Sometimes it breaks past $1,000. However, and that is pretty pricey, but it is really important just to have that record. And what's really great about that is that they will hold on to that transcript. So it's going to cost you like a few $100 out of pocket to get a court reporter there. And then if you want to get the transcript, they'll hold on to that transcript for several years. Like I've heard of them holding on to transcripts for up to 20 years. And what's even better is that if your case does appeal, and the judge wants to subpoena that transcript, they can get access to that transcript without you having to pay for it. But you might not be able to see the transcript. This is where there's like a lot of gray area, and I haven't gone that deeply into my law classes yet. So when you object, you're putting the judge on notice that you're putting the judge on notice that you are preparing to appeal when you object. And you make a record of every harmful judicial error, and you show the appellate tribunal how the judge abused the essential requirements of justice. So when the judge sees you making your record for appeal and realizes the appellate tribunal will see how he is ignoring his duty, he or she will back off and start favoring you instead of your opponent. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, he says. The party who most effectively makes his record for appeal gets more of the court's favor. Silence is not good enough. Being afraid to object is fatal. So make your record. Be prepared to show the appellate tribunal how the judge erred and how the judge's errors were harmful to your case, and the judge will be more favorable to your cause. If you don't object, the judge knows you cannot win on appeal, so the judge will do whatever the judge wishes to do. If you object and the judge does not rule on your objection, it is as if you never objected and the record for appeal has not been made. So work diligently to make your record for appeal, because by doing so, you significantly reduce the likelihood that you will be required to appeal. This is how you win. When you prepare for appeal at every phase of your case, the judge is much less likely to rule against you, simply because judges don't like to be appealed. But if you don't make timely objections and get a ruling on your objections, you lose your right to complain to an appellate court that the judge allowed a rule to be broken. So you lose two ways. Now, let me fast forward a little bit on specifically what types of objections there are. So when do you object? Definitely before it's too late. Every time you think an objection may favor your case, even if you're wrong, wait too long and an opportunity is lost. Wait too long and irreparable damage is done. Wait too long and objection is useless. So, talks about when not to object, timeliness. I want to specifically get into what types of objections there are. Let's see. Okay, so objection classification usually fall into 4 categories: evidence rule violations, procedural rule violations, general law violations, and precedents and common practice. Okay, so the first and easiest objection, and I've actually made this one, is objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. So the objection is asked and answered. So stop repetition. Objection, asked and answered. It saves valuable court time, but it's not the main purpose. So suppose your opponent wishes to emphasize the weight of a certain testimony favorable to his case. He asks, did you witness the accident? The witness answers. Your opponent then asks, did you see the cars collide? The witness answers again. Are you certain the cars crashed into each other? And again, the witness answers. Did the car crash take place while you were present, etc.? Once is enough. Twice is more than enough. So 3 times deserves an objection. 4 times and you've fallen asleep at the switch. Don't allow it. So let's see. Badgering. This is another objection. Badgering is abusive interrogation. Insults are not allowed. Intimidation is not allowed. Badgering is not allowed if you object. So, you know, a lot of, you know, common court TVs will be like, objection, you know, counsel's badgering the witness. And that's usually so. Suppose you're cross-examining a witness for the other side. Isn't it a fact you're a dope dealer and beat your mother to death with a broom handle? These types of questions are perfectly permissible so long as you don't badger the witness. If the witness is a dope dealer and did beat his mother to death with a broom handle, or if there's any evidence at all to support these allegations and the answers are relevant to material issues in the case, it's not badgering. But otherwise, it may be. So let's see. Yeah, so it's like the second you come off as like demeaning and aggressive, that's badgering. So it's not, in that sense, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. And then let's skip over the best evidence rule and competence. Let's see. Counsel testifying. This is a good one. This is a good one, guys. Pay attention, especially if you have, you know, if you live in a Commonwealth state and there are city attorneys that represent the CPS workers, you definitely don't want this. Guardian ad litems. Guardian ad litems all day long. Use it on this. Okay, hold on. Let me go on Do Not Disturb. Some people just don't get it. All right. So the worst form of abuse of the competence rule occurs when lawyers testify to unfairly get facts into evidence. Guardian ad litems do this all the time. It's cheating. Don't allow it. Object. So you must be on guard at all times and be prepared to object. You have to be really paying attention to everything that is going on in the courtroom. That's why a lot of times, you know, when we're hearing stuff and we're getting upset and we're trying to, like, you know, nudge our attorneys, hey, they're still like, hey, what about this? Well, what about this? And they're like, hey, shut up. You know, it's because they're trying to pay attention to what's going on so that they can work the case. So yeah, lawyers are not allowed. If a lawyer does not have firsthand knowledge, like they were there, they experienced it, they were a part of it, they saw it with their own eyes. If they don't have firsthand knowledge of the facts they offer into evidence, they lack the competence to testify, and a timely objection is essential. Otherwise, they will present damaging evidence, dishonestly influencing the court against you, contrary to the letter and spirit of due process. So put a stop to it immediately. Yeah, so anytime, and attorneys, like, people don't even understand, most lawyers don't even understand the rules of evidence in civil procedure anymore. So anytime that you hear an attorney, a CPS, well, a CPS worker is not necessarily an attorney, so that would be just hearsay. But anytime that you have a guardian ad litem or an opposing lawyer trying to talk about your case as though they were there and they were not, they do not have that firsthand knowledge, immediately have your lawyer or yourself object. Counsel is testifying. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Another one is facts not in evidence. So, I mean, there's so many objections. So you've got, you know, you can say if they are trying to claim that something happened, you say objection, you know, counsel is assuming facts not in evidence. Like, if you don't have evidence of that, like basically saying, oh, well, we have this or we have that. Objection, you know, counsel is assuming facts that are not in evidence. So hearsay is like a rumor. So if any party is trying to speak about the case as though it is fact and they were there when neither of those things are true, objection, hearsay, objection, hearsay. You can object as many times as you want, and you can use as many objections as there are. Let's skip over prejudice. That's going to have qualification. Relevance is another good one. So if they try to start taking the case sideways, whether it's while they're examining or cross-examining a witness on the stand, if it is not specifically relevant to the issues of the case at hand, object. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. What does this have to do with my case? If they try to start talking about something that has nothing to do with the case, objection, relevance. Speculation is, you know, objection, speculation. That's when, you know, they're speculating whether, okay, that might take a little bit more time to explain to you guys. Another really good one, and this is more on fact evidence. Another good one is authentication. So if they are trying to present, because there are rules of evidence and they are very important to know. If a party is trying to enter a fact into evidence during trial, or enter evidence during trial, you should have already had a copy of it, you or your attorney. And if you don't, object immediately. Say, Your Honor, this is the first time I'm hearing about this or seeing this. You know, I haven't received this evidence that, you know, because those are the rules of the court. You know, the court is supposed to be fair. So you can't just ambush another party, you know, on the day of trial with evidence that you haven't seen or heard about. That's absolutely not allowed. Or say, you know, the opposing party and their attorney try to get like text messages, like, you know, screenshots of text messages onto the record. I mean, first of all, text messages are inadmissible. So that's an objection right there. But if it does happen to like get into the, you know, into the record, like if the judge actually allows it, you object immediately and say, authentication, objection, Your Honor, this evidence has not been authenticated. Like if you don't put somebody on the stand and have them say, oh, you know, and the counsel will say, hey, do you recognize these messages? And they'll say yes or no. You know, or if he says no, then they can bring something else. Well, perhaps will this refresh your memory? You know, is you know, your number at the top, is this your number? And they'll say yes or no. So if they say no, then the text messages were not authenticated. It cannot be entered into evidence. If they do say, yes, in fact, I sent those messages, that's my phone number, you know, here, I made an in-house motion to bring my phone into court. You can confirm it here. Then the evidence has been authenticated and it can go onto the record. So we'll touch more on objections later. Those are always fun. Objections are kind of fun. I like learning about those. And then the rules of evidence are also very fun. So I'll make more of a point to do a little bit more legal education with you guys. So on to our guest. John, how are you? I see that your signal's working much better now.
Yeah, I had to go over to my phone.
Yeah, I figured. I was telling the producer maybe that would be better.
I was sitting in the office trying to use my laptop off the Wi-Fi, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, I have the same issues. I even got the Gigablast, and I was paying like $350 a month. It was ridiculous, and it was literally no difference from when I had like the basic $80 a month plan with that bandwidth. There's no. It's just a matter of how many. It doesn't make it faster. It's just a matter of like how many devices can connect to your Wi-Fi without slowing it down.
Right.
So, well, I'm glad you got that all figured out. So the rest of the show tonight is dedicated to your case. We got the legal portion all taken care of, you know, as far as my legal education piece that I go. So we'll start by asking, who is John? What do you do?
I'm a maintenance technician. I'm at work right now, actually, because I work overnights. I got it cleared with my boss. He's a pretty cool guy.
That's good. It's always nice to have a good boss.
Right. It helps.
Yeah. So how did CPS come into your life?
Well, actually, my 4-year-old daughter, she suffered a brain hemorrhage. Like CPS was immediately involved. Like first they tried to pin it on us, like we did something. Later on, it was proven it was a birth defect. And during the 5 weeks, when I was in the hospital with my daughter at her bedside, we had CPS showing up at my house, and bringing this agency with them that helps them out, and they were all corrupt. I mean, they were just all over my wife, wanting to say that I beat my kids and I beat my wife and all these other things. And they would show up day after day after day. And after I got home, when they were showing up, and so I told them to get off my property. I said, "You're not court ordered. Get out of here. I don't know what you're even doing here." So like 3 months later, they want to file the juvenile case with the court because they say the kids are in danger, when they believe the kids are in danger. Why? So I asked them, I said, "Why didn't you think this 3 months ago? Why only now? Just because I won't let you on my property, you're going to do this." So then we went to court. Mike and the judge was all for it. I mean, he did everything they said. They lied in court. And so that's how we got into that situation. And like one day I figured out I was on my own in this whole thing when the public defender actually, when I called him and I said, "Look, man, these people are coming up to my house all the time. They won't leave us alone." And he said, "Well, that's a government." Like he said, "That's a government overreach, and it's getting worse and worse by the year. And it's just kick them off your property. Be nice about it, but just kick them off your property." Right. So when we go into court, he told the judge that I said
Oh,
Like, he made me look like this radical.
Oh, wow.
Like, he made me look like a radical in front of the judge. And like the judge said, oh, well, I work for the government, but I agree with him. Like, and after that, it was all downhill. It's like, I want the lawyer to do things to help me out in the case. And he said, oh, well, I can't do that, when I knew damn well he could. So about last January, like, we went to court, and they like made a motion to have another hearing, and that would be the hearing where they would decide if they're going to take the kids or not. Then on February 11th last year, they took my kids. They used medical neglect, like which was a lie. My daughter had her surgery.
Hospital papers showing that your daughter's brain hemorrhage was a birth defect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called an AVM. She had a cluster of blood vessels formed in her brain at birth, and we didn't even know about it. But they formed around that the main artery that goes that's in the back of her head. They like wrapped around that artery, and she had to have like very touchy brain surgery. She's lucky to be alive.
Okay, that was my next question is were they able to treat her for it?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
now,
I mean,
if CPS came and took your kids because of that, first of all, they had no business. The more cases I hear, it's making me sick.
Well, they went up.
Can you confirm that she was?
When they went up against her own person.
I can imagine it requires a lot of, post-surgery medical care. Am I right? And they took her into foster care. Can you trust that they're going to make sure that she gets the medical care that she needs post-operation?
You haven't heard anything yet.
Oh gosh, can I handle this? All I have is a kombucha. This isn't strong enough.
You had her first. The life-saving surgery was on June 10th, 2020. And then second one, they had to remove part of her brain because they had to cut those vessels out all the way down to the center of the brain where they began. So she had all that surgery done. And there was a big scar there. I mean, it was huge where the sutures were. And we were keeping it clean every day, and this and that. And then the neurosurgeon let us know that any anxiety or anything could kill her. And every day the county attorney sending the cops over to my house. Why? Because I wouldn't work with them and I wouldn't comply with what they wanted me to do because they were violating our civil rights. And I'm not going to sit here and let that happen. So what happened is, so I called the neurosurgeon, and this was in October. And I asked the neurosurgeon, would you be able to send me some kind of a letter or something, anything, letting these guys know that you can kill my daughter doing this? So what happened in December, 2 months later in December, she went to the doctor. We took her into the doctor. And it wasn't healing correctly. Well, we were doing everything we possibly could. So when we go to court in February, the day they took the kids, when they said that when I made that phone call to the neurosurgeon, I asked for the note to keep them off my front porch, but I didn't say anything about the wound not healing correctly. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, how can I say something I don't know about? When that happened 2 months later after I made the phone call, but they combined it all together and they made it sound like I didn't care. And then they said that there was some kind of an infection, but there was nothing we could do. We were keeping it clean. We washed her hair all the time, and all this stuff, but they just used all that, and they ran with it, and the judge went right along with it. And then, December, and then in a foster home, they put her in February. They used to be my best friend. In fact, I was over at their house the day that my daughter had the brain hemorrhage. And I told them, I said, don't put my kids in that house because I've seen how they treat their own kids. But sure as hell, a couple months later, my daughter she's showing up with bruises all over her back, handprints on her legs and her shoulders, bite marks. My son was tortured because he had to wear these foot braces because he was born with club feet. But he had to wear them for like 8 hours every night when he went to bed. Well, they were putting them on backwards. So he got pressure sores on his feet. When they didn't do anything about it, he was only 2 years old at the time.
I had a niece who had to wear those. I know exactly what you're talking about because their feet didn't grow correctly and they had to like get, you got to correct them and make them straight. Am I right?
Yeah, but they were putting them on backwards and that was causing him major pain. Like, they would just leave him in his room crying himself to sleep every night, and he ended up getting pressure sores on his feet. So obviously he was in pain. So the doctor said, hey, why don't you come in and we could show you how to put these braces on so this doesn't happen. But they wouldn't do it. They refused. They said, we're not going anywhere to learn anything. And then they offered to do it over Zoom, and they refused to do that too. And then one day, the girl that used to go in to pick the kids up to bring them over for the supervised visits, walked in the house, and the foster dad's sitting in there cleaning his AR-15 and his 9mm pistol right in front of the kids. But this guy doesn't even have a kindergarten education. He was he was homeschooled. He doesn't know how to handle a gun, let alone kids or anything else, and they didn't do anything about it. When they told me about it, but they didn't report it, they didn't do anything. But they just wanted to get me mad because they knew what I was going to do. But I didn't do it. I kept my cool. I just reported everything that happened. I kept notes, and I didn't talk to anybody unless it was in an email, but I got evidence. But then later on like June 1st, my daughter shows up with five obvious signs of she was sexually abused. So I go to the hospital. We live right across the parking lot from a hospital. So I walked over there and I made her an appointment. I said, I got to get my daughter looked at. I think she was sexually abused. So the girl shows up with my kids and I let her know we need to go to the hospital. And she's like, for what? Well, because I would like to have my daughter looked at. I think she was molested. No, we can't do that. So she calls her supervisor on the phone, and the supervisor, he's yelling at me. He's like, what do you want to do this for? What if we take her in to get her tested and nothing happened? That's what I want. That's what I want to know. But if something did happen, I want to know that too.
Right. I understand exactly what you're saying because I went through exactly the same thing. And they did nothing. They did nothing.
And then I told this girl that brings the kids over, what I said to her was, my exact words were, you guys dug a hole and I got God fighting this battle for me now. Well, that intimidated her. So I lost my visits because I mentioned God in her presence. That intimidated her.
Oh,
so they terminated my visits.
What is the last three names? The last three. Please don't even. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. This story is blowing my mind right now.
Oh, you don't know anything. I mean, this isn't even half of what they did. So I get everything in email. I have the email saying that when they're not working with me anymore, because I mentioned God and the family support workers present, and that intimidated her. And then I got the family support place the family support girl works for. They sent an email also agreeing with this. So right there, I got a civil rights violation, all in email. Then they didn't file a report. There was an investigation, but was called into the hotline. And it's a law here. And if there's an investigation in the foster care involving kids, there has to be a police report. Like, and there was an investigation, but they didn't file the police report. So I went in asking for this police report, like, over and over and over and over again, and they kept kicking it around. Like, well, you have to get that from the department. You have to get that from the police. Why, nobody had this police report. Why, so I gathered my own, like, photographs, and I had a pile of photographs, and I walked into the police station. I asked for the police chief, like, and he walked out, and I slammed him down on the counter. Well, I said, now you're going to do something about this shit because I'm holding the evidence in my hand. That day, he was
right there. I'm going to pause you for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I bet you're going to answer what I'm about to say. You're going to prove me right. And this sucks. This sucks what I'm going to say because the truth will set you free. But first, it's going to piss you off. If you thumb your nose at Big Brother, whether it be the courts, the police, the government, 100% they will fuck with your life and they will retaliate. You will fuck with your later. You can stick it to them, but you can do it nicely.
Yeah, but they didn't know who they were retaliating against this time because I wasn't going to let them do it. Like, because one day I realized I was never going to see my kids again. Never. But then in December, well, let me get to that. Well, but anyway, like when I walked into there that time, which was like maybe middle of June, with all the pictures that I had for the police, when I told him, now you're going to do something about it. Like that day, he was in the county attorney's office, and within a week, my kids were moved out of that home. Like, but the home that they moved the kids into, like, was the girl, the foster mom, is our former family support worker. They took her off the case months ahead because they knew they were going to do this eventually. Because they knew with all the issues happening in that like foster home that they were going to end up moving these kids, so they pulled her off the case. Then they waited to get my kids into her house, like, which they finally did. Now, let's see, where should I go next? I mean, there's so much to talk about. I can sit here all night.
Go ahead. You have the rest of the show. You have the rest of the show.
But
hear the story.
Well, we're going to go to December now, and 2021, and my wife is pregnant. Now, also we're supposed to have court hearings every 90 days. The first one was January 6th, but then it was like when they took the kids, it was February 11th. The next court date we had, the next hearing, was August. They passed up 2 court dates. They just blew them off. They didn't have them. Like one, they blamed on me. Like whatever. And so August rolls around, and like my wife's pregnant. And like 2 days before, I go into the court CPS office. Like me and the caseworker are like nose to nose. I was just ripping into him something terrible. Like, I'm not afraid of these people because they're not doing this to my family. Like, so a couple days later, we have court. Like, he goes in there and he's just praising me. I'm doing this right. I'm doing that right. And I read bullshit from the get-go. Like, so after the court date's over, like, he walks up to me and like, hey, how do we do in there tonight? Looked pretty good, didn't it? And I said, what are you going to do with my unborn daughter? Well, we're going to have to take her. We've already talked to the foster mom. Well, we're going to have all 3 of your kids together. So it'll be okay. I said, you're not taking my kid. You're not doing it. And that's a newborn baby. She needs her mother and all this. And you didn't have any reason to take the kids in the first place. You're not taking my baby.
No, they really didn't. They really didn't.
And so, right. So on August 31st, we were going to let my daughter name the baby because of everything she went through. Like, and she wanted to name her Annabelle. Like, I'm like, all right. Like, but I'm driving to work one day, and I'm like driving down the highway, and I get this like loud thought in my mind. And I know a lot of people might think this is nuts, but I'm serious. When you hear how it ended up, you're going to like freak out. But it said, name your baby Heavenly Grace because they can't take that away from you. Like, and I pulled over to the side of the road and I was crying. I mean, it was so real. Like I was bawling like a baby, and like called my wife and I told her, I said, we got to change baby's name. Like, and I told her what happened, and she's like, that's a beautiful name. I love it. Like within the next couple days afterwards, like my wife texted me, looking at the caseworker that just told me a couple, like right after the court date, told me that they're going to take the baby, resign. Like he was forced to resign. I think that like whatever I had with evidence wise, because I was filing grievances, calling the CEO's office of the department like all the time, and I was just complaining with all this evidence I had against him. And all of a sudden he resigns his job. Like, so my daughter is born on September 17th. Like, we named her Heavenly Grace. And we had another court date on November 3rd. Like, so we're sitting in the courtroom, and like my daughter has the baby, holding the baby. Like, and the judge looks over at the county attorney and he said, counselor, this man's wife has a baby in her arms. She said, are you trying to tell me that his home is safe enough for a newborn baby, but not for the older kids? Like, and the county attorney looks at him and she just shrugs her shoulders. She didn't even have anything to say. Like, he looks at her, he said, well, that's quite the paradox, wouldn't you say? 2 weeks later, there's a knock on my door. CPS is at the door. And they're saying that my daughter made pictures sitting in daycare, like, and there was a monster hanging over a newborn baby with a knife in his hand. Like, when they asked her who the monster was, she said it was Daddy. Well, anyone that knows my daughter knows that's a bullshit story. Because me and my daughter are like so tightly bonded, you couldn't separate us as a tribe. Like, so the caseworker picks up the baby. She looks the baby over. She looks around the house. And so I look at her. I said, where's the pictures? Did you bring them with you? I'd like to see them. Oh, well, they got rid of the pictures. They don't have them. Well, I said, what the hell are you doing in my house then? You have no right to be here without evidence. This is bullshit. I said, oh, well, there was a call through the hotline. I said, I know who the call was from. A county attorney did it. Why? Because the judge just ripped his ass in the courtroom a couple of weeks ago. So now he wants to try to take my baby. Just to make up for it. And she goes, well, I can't tell you who did it. I said, I know who did it. But anyway, the report she filed with the court said that my house was a very safe environment. The baby was healthy. She was normal weight. She looked really good. And the accusations were unfounded. That right there, that was the clincher for me getting my kid back. Because the day that I fired my public defender was November 3rd court date. We had the motion to withdraw hearing first. But the judge sitting there, like, now you know that your lawyer is a very dependable, by blah, blah, blah. He said, there's other options we can do. We can do all the work and you can get your advice from him and this and that, or I could give you another public defender and you could hire one. And I said, I'll do it myself. And then right after that, I brought up to the judge about that missing police report. Well, it should have been filed back in May, and the judge looked over at the county attorney. Like, and he asked, he said, there was back in May, there was an investigation. She said, yes, Your Honor. And Mike, he holds up a bunch of papers and he said, why isn't this in my report? Well, and she shrugged her shoulders and said, I don't know, Your Honor. Well, and then he asked me, he asked her again, why isn't this in my report? She said the same thing. I don't know, Your Honor. She just shrugged her shoulders and said, I don't know. Well, and then after that was the incident with the baby, right after he asked about the report. He asked about the baby in the courtroom. Like, so on the last court date we had, February 9th of this year, we're in the courtroom, and CPS, right now they're working for me. They were on my side with all this stuff. The guardian ad litem, she used to be like rotten working with them. Like, and I reprimanded her once. We had one of them team meetings where the guardian ad litem and the caseworker and my family's all together. But she's writing all these recommendations not to bring the kids home. Like, and this is when they were in that first, like, really abusive foster home. Like, and I asked her, like, looked over at her across the table. It's the first meeting I had with her. I said, what is your job? What do you do here? And she said, well, I represent your children. And I said, how do you do that exactly? I said, I've never seen you over here when there's a visit. I've never, like, you don't do anything. All you do is sit in your office writing these reports recommending my kids don't come home. I said, that last report you wrote back at the end of June, that would have kept my kids in that abusive foster home another 6 months. Like, from what you were writing in that report, why did you do that? Oh, well, we didn't know what was happening at that time. I said, well, that's pretty negligent too, wouldn't you think? You could have killed my daughter, but you're representing her. And after that, she was on my ball team. She was over at my house joining all the meetings. She come over to see the kids, see how the kids were doing. She knew she was wrong. And but at the end of the court date on February 9th, CPS had the case recommendation, like, for the court, that everything was beautiful at our house. It was great. Recommend the kids come home on February 16th, like, and all that stuff. And, like, when the judge read that, like, he looked over at the county attorney and, like, he asked the county attorney, is there any objections to this case plan? But the county attorney couldn't even look him in the face. Like, he was looking down at the table and he kind of mumbled, yes, Your Honor, we agree with the case plan. But the judge even asked him, he said, Counselor, are you sure? Yes, Your Honor, we agree with the case plan. And then he went around the table asking everybody else, and then he got to me last because I was representing myself. Like, and he asked me if I agreed with the case plan. I said, you're damn right I do. Let's bring him home. Like, so they agreed. We were doing overnight visits, like a couple nights a week, and, like, unsupervised visits 5 nights a week. And like, so they even let us, they were so nice, they let us, like, save our visits on Monday and Tuesday, because I think Valentine's Day was, like, Wednesday this year. So actually the kids came home on Valentine's Day, but on paper they were home on the 16th of February. But I didn't leave these people. I mean, don't let them violate rights. You have rights as a human being, and don't let them. We got to call them on everything that they do. When they're doing something wrong, call them on it. Because with all the things that they do wrong, they're going to mess up. Like, and if you get everything in writing, in email, because I got a big pile of emails sitting at the house, like, right now, that I'm going to go into court with, and I'm going to sue the shit out of them. Like, because I wasn't afraid to tell the county attorney, you're not going to be county attorney next election. You are not. Like, what I had to do is I had to get into the, like, the county attorney's email. I had to get direct conversation with him, between me and him. Like, and that's the other.
To get that attorney out of office now, you know.
Oh, believe me, we got the primaries.
You don't have to wait until next election. You could force him into retirement.
I probably could, but I'm going to wait till the election. I want everybody to know what he did, like what he does to kids, because I'm not going to back down. Because kids need a voice in this situation. Like, we have people like you and like Mr. Davis and everybody, but you never hear anything. I didn't even know about you guys. I was looking up corrupt CPS on YouTube months ago, trying to figure out what the hell I could do. And I just didn't know where to turn. And I was just left alone. I mean,
you have a huge network of people here that care about your case and can support you the best way that we can. So welcome.
because my public defender was against me, and when your lawyer's against you, helping the other side, because he didn't want to piss off the county attorney because he's got to deal with them. You know, they got to work out deals, and I know shit was going on behind closed doors because they never once planned to get my kids back. I had to fight for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. like I do now, and I lived an hour away from work. When they terminated my visits, I got home at like 7:15 in the morning, and they were bringing my kids like 8:30, 9 o'clock, so I couldn't even go to sleep. So what I did is I sat out in the park, and there were days when there was a heat advisory. But I was sitting out in the park, and I was calling everybody, senators, congressmen, the ombudsman, the inspector general. I even called the FBI and filed 2 complaints with the FBI. But like anybody I could call, that's what I did. Like, and then I had to turn around and go back to work because I wasn't allowed at the house, like when my kids were there, because I talked about God. But the kids left around 4 in the afternoon. I had to be to work at 6, an hour away. So I got home long enough to eat something.
Hey, John, we just got a really interesting comment. So,
yeah,
Demob, I hope I said that right. Or is it supposed to say like Demob? I don't know. I'm sorry if I butchered that. My mom, a former foster care worker, says there is a CPS season. It is well known amongst daycare workers and schools when CPS season happens. It's the beginning of the school year. Interesting. Thank you for that.
I'm not surprised. But so I would be able to get home, make a lunch, couldn't even sleep, and then I had to drive an hour to get back to work 12 more hours. There was one week I worked 76 hours on a 1 hour nap. Like I was falling asleep behind the wheel. Well, I fell asleep on a crane 30 feet above the floor one night.
Oh my gosh, be careful.
My supervisor sent me home. He's like, man, you gotta go home and get some sleep. So I got some sleep that night. I got my 8 hours in. I mean, I could work. Well, I can leave anytime after 2 o'clock in the morning because I work 8 hours. But that's what I was doing. I mean, that's how hard I was fighting to get my kids back. You can't let these people do this stuff. You can't.
No, it's very, and I'm glad, you know, you haven't mentioned her, but I'm assuming your wife.
Yeah, my wife. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad you had her, even though there was a period of time where, you know, only she could be there with them. Anybody watching, please don't go through this alone. I just joined a new church that, you know, it's very similar. Their culture is very similar to my children's. And it kind of reminds me of them. And, you know, it's like they come over every Thursday now. I hang out with them every Sunday. Because up until recently, I've been going through this alone, and it almost cost me my life. Don't try to do this alone. You got to find a support system.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. I mean, I've had churches turn me away. Why? Because I went in there and I told them, but I'm going to, because the day I realized that I was never going to see my kids again, man, I dropped to my knees and I prayed. I made things right. Because I told him that I need a miracle and I need him to take this battle from me. But the hard part is like not taking it back. You got to leave it there. Why? Because after, like I said, as soon as I did that, we got rid of that caseworker, and then my newborn daughter was a miracle in itself.
So someone named Lori has a message for you, John. Can you see it? Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, read it. I got my glasses are inside.
Okay, so Lori Gould says, John, I am so proud of what you've accomplished. I have prayed for you every step of the way.
Yeah, I know Lori.
Thank you.
Hi, Lori. That's my mom's best friend.
Oh, welcome to the show, Lori. Thank you for your comment. I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, what I did is I made the kids a support page on my Facebook. It was a private group. You should have seen all the people trying to get into that thing. The former foster mom was always trying to get into it, sending me friend requests. I'm like, are you crazy? But I made that but I documented each and everything that happened. Why? So everything that I'm saying here, I mean, it's all on that page. Why? The day I got that idea to change the baby's name, I know that was a message. Because the way that it worked out. Like, what else can explain that?
Yeah.
Like it even said, why name her Heavenly Grace? Because they can't take that from you ever. Like, and they tried and they couldn't do it.
Well, she says hi. Lori says hi, John. I love you, and I am so glad to be here. She was responding to your hello.
Okay,
Lori. Okay, so we are approaching the end of the show. So before, I guess I only have one question because are the kids home?
Yeah, the kids are home.
They're home now. Congratulations! I love
the case closes. The case closes in August. But CPS says they're going to try to close it early on paper. But I don't know if the judge will let that happen or not. But we're going to try.
Still be on guard. Definitely be on guard.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess I don't have to ask, if your kids were watching, what would you say to them? Because they're back home now, and I'm so happy. I love a happy story. Do you have solid plans? And you don't have to answer this, and please don't go into detail if you do. But do you plan on suing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Say no more. If you need any assistance with that, Attorney Vincent Davis does phone consultation. He does. He's got several packages of different things that he offers clients outside of like a full-on retainer. So that is definitely something to consider. Get in touch with our producer Grace, who reached out to you, or get in touch with Georgette Truin, his legal assistant, and she also has 3 of her own shows. But Vincent Davis would be a great person.
Does he travel? Because I'd love to have him if he's recorded.
He does. Okay. He does. So get in touch with Grace or Georgette and see about starting that.
Absolutely.
So I guess my last question before we go is, what is your advice to any other parent that's going through a similar situation to what you went through?
Get everything in writing. Don't take phone calls unless it's an emergency. Get emails. Like when they do something that you know is wrong, that's violating your rights as a person and human being, call them on it. Like, see what they say in those emails, because I promise you that they're going to mess up because they're breaking the law.
Yeah.
Well, at one time they're going to say, when they're going to say just the right thing in writing, and you're going to have them. You'll get them. You'll get your kids back too. So that's what
Now, how would you suggest somebody go about learning what their rights are?
Like shows like this, I Google and Senator Nancy Schaefer.
He said
she's my hero.
Nancy Schaefer.
She is my hero.
Senator Saint Nancy Schaefer, because she deserves that title.
She's the one that motivated me to fight this the way that I did. Like, and I even put on that Facebook page of my kids that I would like to pick up where she left off. Because
Did you know how she died?
Yeah, she was murdered.
And so was her husband.
Then they call it a murder
the government
suicide.
said it was? Yeah,
murder suicide. But I was handing out copies of her reports to everybody. Boy, the court doesn't like seeing those. The public defender didn't like seeing it. CPS didn't like seeing it, because I gave it to all of them, and I told them, I said, I know what you're doing. You're not doing it to my kids.
I commend you. You have been a wonderful guest, John. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. People need to be heard. Kids need a voice.
Yes, amen. Or as my new friends say, praise the Father. I'm going to start saying that now. Praise the Father.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much. I would love to have you back on after your case closes. Yeah, if anything crazy happens, reach out. We're a very large support system, and we're here for you.
I could use it. Thank you.
Of course. Well, John, you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you again for being on. Everyone,
Yeah,
I will be on tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Pacific time. That's 9 a.m. Eastern time for Fight With Me Fridays. We're doing self-care, coping with trauma from our CPS cases. I've got an interesting story to share about that, but I'll save it for tomorrow's show. And thank you all for joining me tonight. And you guys have an amazing rest of your evening and happy almost Friday. Good night, everyone. Good night, John.
Bye.